Good afternoon, everyone. Wow, really? Seriously? I'm Jelani Cobb, Dean of Columbia Journalism School. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to Pulitzer Hall and to this important conversation at the heart of civic life in New York City. And before we go any further, I want to specifically thank Professor Lawson and Professor Benitez for the work that they did to make this event happen today. So can we show our appreciation for them? We gather today at a time when public trust in institutions, whether government or the press, is under historic strain. And yet, it's precisely in moments like this that the value of local journalism and local governance becomes not just clear, but urgent. City Hall may sit just a few subway stops from this campus, but the decisions made there ripple into the lives of every New Yorker on housing, education, public safety, and the ability to simply live with dignity in this city. Columbia University is a vital part of New York City's civic fabric, and Columbia Journalism School, in particular, has a long tradition of equipping journalists to ask the hard questions, to speak truth to power, and to amplify the voices that are too often left out of the conversation. Our students, many of whom are helping to produce today's forum, understand this responsibility. They're not just learning how to report the news, they're preparing to defend democracy by doing so. So I want to thank all of you, our speakers, our guests, our moderator, Professor Benitez, and especially our City Newsroom students for being part of this dialogue. What we do here today matters, because what happens in New York City doesn't just stay in New York City, it sets a tone for the entire nation. So let's get started.
Council Speaker Adrienne Adams. You're going to sit over here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
And before we start, just a few words about the rules over here, right? So City Newsroom reporters are going to be asking the questions, most of the questions for this forum. We ask everybody to stay put for the next 2 hours. At the end, we have a quick poll for everybody to fill out. It's less than a minute poll. We're gonna have a QR code on the screen so you can basically voice some of your opinions about this forum. And please refrain from applauding or booing, anything like that. You can applaud, obviously, after we're done with each of our candidates. The candidates are going to speak for 15 minutes answering questions, and hopefully we have enough time so they can offer their vision for the city. So thank you everybody for being here, and also those watching on YouTube live right now. Thank you for watching. We hope they stay until the end at 2 p.m. And thank you, City Council Speaker, for being here today with us. I want to start by asking you something that just happened. Local 32BJ and the Hotel and Gaming Trades Council, two very large, important, politically active unions, just endorsed the candidacy of former Governor Andrew Cuomo. What's your reaction to that, and how difficult is it going to be for you to really win this Democratic primary in June with so many unions already and some of your colleagues in the council endorsing the former governor?
Well, thank you very much, Professor Benitez, for having me, and thank you all for your hospitality today. I got to tell you, it's a pleasure to have you before me, and for those that have been in the Red Room also, I welcome you back anytime for us to chop it up in there as well. As far as the endorsements today, as a candidate, we have to be prepared for anything to happen. Obviously, this is not the first time that I've run for elective office. This is not the first or last union or unions that will either endorse me or not endorse me. So I'm prepared, for all of that. Unions make decisions according to their board and their members. I respect that. If they feel that one candidate is going to be more for their body than another, I respect that as well. And these are political decisions. So they're not personal decisions, which, of course, I get calls from all of the union heads that tell me these are not personal decisions. I respect that, and I trust that. So, like, they have their process. Their process is to be respected, and they are doing what they feel is best for their members.
I'm sure you're disappointed, though.
Well, of course there's disappointment. You know, endorsements are very important when it comes to our running in these races, when it comes to campaigns, when it comes to the benefits of campaigns, which of course tend to be boots on the ground, as we call them in the long run of campaigns. So of course there's disappointment, but I am ever so hopeful of my campaign, of the work that I've put in, as my candidacy, of course, as knowing that I am the most qualified individual to take the role of mayor for the city of New York as the first woman in the role of mayor.
We're gonna start talking about DEI, and we have a question from Kate.
Speaker Adams, thank you for being with us today. So the Council just passed a resolution you proposed condemning President Trump's revocation of federal DEI policies. We want to know, does this resolution have any practical implication, or is this a symbolic justice?
As with any resolution, I want it to be not just symbolic but practical as well when it comes to practice. I dare say that that the federal administration watches what New York does, hence the target on our back from start to finish, and something that we are going to have to deal with no matter who is mayor. So when we did the reso, we did it with the faith that it would be looked at and watched. DEI is something that is not to be played with. The rollback of DEI is something that we take very, very seriously as a women majority city council, the most diverse city council in the history of the city of New York. There are just some things that we feel are very, very important that we must do to make an impact, and quite frankly, to be the role model for the rest of the nation to follow through with. So if New York is the leader on condemning DEI, we're hoping that other jurisdictions will do the same. So in answering your question, we want it to be practical, and we want it to be symbolic as well. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that should never be rolled back. It's something too important to the nation.
But is it wise to challenge the Trump administration at a time in which New York City could lose federal funding, and how does this impact your relationship to Trump as mayor?
If we say nothing, then we lay down and we give our city over to the Trump administration, something that I am not willing to do for the people of the city of New York. As a leader to this city, my responsibility is to protect us, to protect all New Yorkers. I cannot in good faith ever, as mayor, as I have watched our current mayor do, be silent or cozy up to the Trump administration, to the detriment, quite frankly, of our citizens of this city. The Trump administration has pretty much stepped on our Constitution. People are being kidnapped from our streets. Money is being taken away from our schools and across this city. I could never be silent as the speaker, much less as the mayor of the city of New York. My responsibility is, as a leader, once again, to lead where our current administration has not done that. They have fallen down. They are selling books for Trump loyalists. Need I say more when it comes to who really, really cares about the city of New York and who is just throwing us away for own personal interests and other things? So, no, I am not afraid of Donald Trump. He's a bully, and my responsibility is to protect this city, protect our New Yorkers from the work and the chaos of this administration. And again, to your point, where collaboration with the administration is needed and necessary, of course, as the mayor, I will step in and collaborate as often as possible, and I hope to do that. I've said in the past, I can't wait to meet Donald Trump. I'd love to tell him what being a real New Yorker is like in this current climate that we're dealing with now, and his responsibility as the president to protect not only the people that he feels that are his friends, that are his cronies, that have taken care of him, but also the entire nation. That includes all New Yorkers that may or may not have voted for him to be president.
We're going to pivot now to your management of the council, and Lauren has a question.
Hi, Speaker Adams.
Hi.
You were criticized by Deputy Mayor Randy Mastro for removing Sylvana Brooks Powers and Lynn Schulman from the budget.
First deputy mayor really has no business speaking about council business until he learns what that means. So in the decision to move those two council members, it was done with thorough consideration of the leadership team, of which Majority Whip Brooks Powers is a member of the leadership team, which is critical to the decisions that are made within the New York City Council leadership. So it was the voices that we were listening to as the entire leadership team, me as the leader of the entire body, and to our council members. In her role, she is responsible to whipping the votes. That is a trusted responsibility. So if colleagues are not trusting that because they may feel that values are not in line with their values, there is a problem. So let's just say maybe some of my predecessors might have been a lot harsher in taking away leadership positions and taking away committee chairs for both of those individuals. I chose not to do that because that is not my management or leadership style. I chose to move those individuals from the budget team, which is much less harmful to their overall roles in the entire New York City Council as a whole.
Were you seeking their endorsement, and are their districts going to suffer in the budget? Are they going to lose funding for their districts?
Never. I have never done that, and thank you for that question as well. No district has ever suffered because any council member has either endorsed me, not endorsed me, said yes or approved the budget or not approved the budget. That has never happened under my leadership, primarily because, again, we are a diverse leadership. I come from Southeast Queens. My district looks a lot like the majority of all of my colleagues' districts. So if I were to defund or divest or disinvest in anyone's community, I would be investing in my communities that look like me and my own constituents. That has never happened, nor would it ever.
We have Raquel has a question on housing.
Speaker Adams, housing advocates oppose a bill you champion that allows for short-term rental or Airbnb back into the city. Could you explain why you believe this is a positive step in addressing the housing crisis?
Can you repeat the question, please? You were a little low.
Housing advocates oppose a bill you champion, the bill 1107, that allows for Airbnb back into the city. Could you explain why you believe this is a positive step in addressing the housing crisis?
Thank you very much, Raquel, for the question. And this bill has had many, many facets. I'll just say this, that the sponsor of the bill has changed the bill quite a lot. So as Speaker, I always watch the process and where the sponsors of the bill are going with changes or not changes. So this bill has been changed quite a bit. It is still undergoing the process. In its iterations, though, what I can tell you is that coming from a district of homeowners and a district that has not had a whole lot of opportunity for growth when it comes to allowing more opportunities for housing in certain places, and has been considered in some places as NIMBY, which we're trying to get away from that moniker. In looking at this bill, I have actually seen some homeowners that have been harmed by a lack of allowing their homes to be used for profit, to help them with their mortgages, help them to pay their bills. So in my estimation, that aspect of the legislation was being favored in looking at this legislation.
Okay, we're going to go with another question now about federal funding and research funding. Kate?
So just in about 15 minutes, just outside this building, a protest will gather. It's by Columbia medical students and staff. They're protesting federal administration cuts to research funding, as well as the attack of the federal administration on our students and staff. What do you think your role would be as mayor to protect the access to federal funding for research in institutions like Columbia?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And how sad is it in the year 2025 when we need research more than ever before, when we see an administration coming in now, quite frankly, with severely incompetent individuals in leadership roles, now managing billions of dollars for the nation. As mayor of this city, it would again be my responsibility to speak out against these federal cuts. As Speaker, I have done that pretty much on a daily basis. That's not going to change with me as mayor. I would actually have even more to say as the mayor of this city. And again, I would look forward to those meetings with federal administrators to find out exactly what their intentions are and why this attack on our higher institutions, our higher educational institutions, why this target in particular, the target who is actually the pipeline of brilliance that we need for sustenance in this country, for the health of individuals in this country. So where, again, collaboration would be necessary and welcome, this is one of those areas, of course, and again, where instances where we would need to speak out, again, as I have been doing and will continue to do, to chastise this administration for doing the wrong thing. That would be my role as well.
And vice versa, how do you think Colombia might be falling short in its contributions, specifically financial contributions to the city? And as mayor, would you have a plan to address those?
As mayor, my responsibility would be to bring Colombia into the room with me. Everywhere that I have spoken and will continue to speak out, my administration will be inclusive. We will not work in silos because we need for everybody who has an interest in making the city the best that it could possibly be in the room with me, in that conference room, in Gracie Mansion, where those meetings are being held. I would never want your interests to be shut out. I would want to hear your voices, and together, let me just repeat that, together we would work this out to make our determinations.
But will you be willing to commit municipal funding to an institution like Columbia University if the federal government goes ahead and cuts $400 million? Will you help out to keep operations as they are at the moment?
As mayor, that would be my responsibility to do that. Yes.
Thank you. So Raquel has another housing question.
Based on research, the city continues to give tax breaks and subsidies to landlords or developers even when they fail to deliver on their obligations. Under your leadership, what would you do in situations where there's a clear need to cut off city support?
Yeah, great question. You know, there's a lot of bureaucracy in the administration that as mayor I intend to break through. I've seen it through these 3 city budgets that I've negotiated. Again, the only candidate in the race that has actually had the experience to undertake a mayoralty. Now working on my 4th city budget, which we intend again to be successful and protect. There is bureaucracy that I feel that's never been challenged on the other side of City Hall. As mayor, it is going to be my intention, very, very intentional mayoralty, to make sure, number one, that I have the people in place who are competent to handle the deputy mayorship. People that have experience will come into roles as deputy mayors that have already been there and done that, just like the way that I've led in leadership on the city council, people that have had experience in being chairs for education, for youth services, and other places across the city council. That would be my intention also in bringing in leadership to help crack through that bureaucracy that has been holding us back for far too long. 2
quick questions, Lauren.
Yes. You criticized previous outdoor dining guidelines, but restaurant owners say that the new regulations are complicated and costly. Do you support these new guidelines?
The new guidelines, we are actually holding oversight hearings again. The oversight dining issue is something that we have to protect outdoor dining, first of all. We have to remember also that outdoor dining, the expansion of outdoor dining came through because of the pandemic, and everything was free during the pandemic, and we wanted to save our businesses. We wanted to save our hospitality, our restaurants, so that's how that came about. Post-pandemic, we had to go back to our pre-pandemic standards, and things had to be regulated. We have now seen so many applications coming in for outdoor dining. The issue is, can the DOT keep up? And that is the issue that the council is now dealing with. is the DOT really doing what they wanted to do? Quite frankly, in their wanting to handle the oversight of outdoor dining, and that's something that we are now taking a look at in our oversight of them doing what they asked to do, and that was to manage outdoor dining. We find several issues with the handling of it, and we need to figure out exactly how much DOT can handle and why there are holdups now in processing applications that should be fulfilled.
When was the last time that you did outdoor dining in the city?
Oh my gosh, that I did outdoor dining in the city when the weather was warmer. We've had a kind of a grueling spring that doesn't really want to turn into spring. So it would have been last year in the warmer months, probably in the hot. I love it, quite frankly, to be outside. So it would have been in the warmer months.
And
last year.
before we let you go, did you agree with Mayor Eric Adams a year ago when he sent the NYPD into campus?
Oh my gosh, I was appalled.
You
First
would
of all,
have done it.
First of all, I had nothing to do with that. Let's just be very, very polite. I had nothing to do with that. The mayor does not ask me for my advice, obviously. If he had, things would look a whole lot better for this city had the mayor actually collaborated the way that I would have hoped that we would have had that kind of a collaborative relationship between the city council and the administration. That didn't work. Sorrowfully, that did not work. So my advice was not invoked for that. I was astonished to see what happened and to see the way that the campus was, in my opinion, storm-trooped when things could have been handled so differently.
City Council Speaker, thank you so much.
Are we done? No, I want to stay.
They told me you have to go at 12:30.
I do, but this is the best
Thank
part
you.
of my day. So
Thank you very much for coming.
A pleasure. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you. See you soon. Thank you. He's here? Okay. Up next, we're going to have a former Assemblyman Michael Blake. I think he is in the building already. So we're going to start with him in a minute. Also Walden. Let's have Walden. Okay. We're gonna. Mr. Blake. Thank you for coming. How are you? See you.
Hello. Hi there. Hello there.
Mr. Blake, thank you so much for being here with us on this forum. I was asking City Council Speaker Adrienne Adams that this morning, two major unions endorsed the campaign of former Governor Andrew Cuomo, 32BJ and the Hotel and Gaming Trades Council. Are there any unions left for someone like you who's struggling to fundraise and to really get your name out there before the June primary?
Struggling to fundraise because I started on 11/26 because I was trying to help Kamala Harris become president. Proportionally, we've actually done as well as others month by month. So I want to make sure we clarify that question there. Are there more unions? Yes, to the question. You know, I think you saw that you had two unions that endorsed who were supportive of former mayor, well, the soon-to-be former mayor, Eric Adams, in that regard. But our job is to continue organizing and mobilizing the way we have been. It's the reason why we've had 14 clergy members that have endorsed us. It's the reason why we've been endorsed by the Three Bridges Democratic Club. It's the reason why we're about to roll out endorsements of elected officials. This is going to be a race where you have to demonstrate how you are building coalitions. And that's what we will be doing consistently. And we're ready to do that and demonstrate how we have the opportunity to mobilize. No one is going to win this race just on first choices. We all understand that. You have to get second through fifth, and we will be able to demonstrate how we have mobilization to do that across the city.
We're going to start talking about higher education, and Kate has a question.
Mr. Blake, thank you so much for sitting with us today. So my first question for you is about something you said about legislative proposals to tax higher education nonprofits. You said that it's a delicate balancing act. I was wondering, what is your stance on generating revenue as a city from big landowners like Columbia University?
Yeah, I think we have to find more creative and thoughtful ways to make sure that we are closing the gaps that are going to be happening. You're going to have funding cuts that are going to be coming from DC. And so I think that's one of the elements. Now, let me start on how we engage with our revenue. First, we should have a vacant apartment tax. I think that for anyone who is not actually living in New York City, you know, we should make sure that we're generating revenue from them. That by itself would bring in about $400 million to do that. Second, we have to actually reclaim back the unclaimed fees and fines, in particular from parking. That would be about $2 billion doing that alone. Third, we have to look at true property tax exemptions. Now, I think for universities, given all that's happening in the taxes you're going through, as opposed to us just saying we're trying to get more revenue from you directly, I do think people need to be looking at endowments to make sure that your tuitions are staying contained in this regard. But we should actually look more aggressively at places like Madison Square Garden, which is not paying on property taxes. So if you take it in that kind of approach, you're able to be more thoughtful in terms of how you're generating revenue. But then lastly, and I was the first person in this race to say this, if and when we get cuts from DC, we should make sure we hold back sending federal taxes to DC. We should not be in a scenario where Donald Trump is hurting our communities, but we're actually not able to generate revenue for ourselves.
Okay, let's talk more about budgeting. Raquel?
Your Project 2026 NYC includes a lot of free resources like regular cash payments to New Yorkers in need, free childcare services regardless of income, free CUNY tuition waivers, and to pay creators to make videos and about New York NYC restaurants and attractions. What mechanisms will you put in place to ensure long-term viability without having to rely on temporary sourcing?
Absolutely, and this is one of the reasons why I'm laying out you have to be able to pay for these plans regardless of what's happening otherwise. And so, again, first and foremost, gathering and reclaiming the unclaimed fees and fines, that would be $2 billion right there. Making sure we're actually reapportioning what's happening within the city budget. Why on earth did we have $1.4 billion being spent in NYPD in overtime, which was clearly not around public safety? But also looking at other entities like Strategic Resource Group. You shouldn't have cops coming onto campuses and other places and essentially terrorizing students in that regard. We should actually make sure we're generating revenue consistently. You take those kinds of steps, you're essentially talking about bringing in $4 to $5 billion without increasing taxes on one person in this room. And that's why I'm saying that there's two things that make me uniquely qualified in this race. As the only person who has White House, State House, and local experience, I know how to generate revenue in thoughtful ways. And as the only person, as the vice chair of the DNC who's actually defeated Donald Trump, I know how to do this as well. And so we can make sure we have a game plan on how to pay for these programs intentionally. I also do believe we have to make sure we're finding more ways that more people are able to generate revenue individually as well as commercial as well. And we can do that by very specific mechanisms. I think we should eliminate having credit scores used when it comes to rent home ownership applications. If you do that, you make it more likely for someone to get and keep a home, which generates more revenue there. I think we should rescind incentives for landlords and developers who are not actually doing truly affordable housing, because then you have more funding that actually can go to these programs that we're talking about. And so to that degree, it's being very intentional and thoughtful. It's a $114 billion budget. You can't be in a scenario where we cannot find ways to fund for our programs. It's about better management and a better vision, and that's what we're laying out right now. And for those who couldn't hear, Project 2026 is our overall policy vision that we've laid out. It's on the website at blake4nyc.com, so you can see what is the vision and then how do we actually pay for it.
Lauren has a, go ahead. Margaret.
I have a follow-up. In the event that you don't get the revenues from those things that you mentioned, how do you get guaranteed funding to offer these resources to individuals?
You remove it from programs that should not have that level of funding right now in the city government.
Like what?
NYPD overtime is a perfect example. SRG and NYPD is a perfect example. You're seeing consistently that you have overspending happening at H&H and HHC. You have two health systems that are not actually coordinated in any regard, which doing that would not actually hurt us. It actually would help us because we would not only generate more revenue, but you have better planning that would happening in the healthcare systems. And so this is why I'm saying that you've had people who have had chances to fix these things and they haven't. And the reason why I'm running is that I want to actually lean into the experience I had in the assembly, what I had nationally, and say, you can do this better. And if you then are able to achieve the places that I'm referencing, you've actually generated more revenue to pay for these programs as opposed to less.
Let's talk about childcare. Lauren?
Yeah, so since 2020, over $800 million have been allocated to local districts for childcare subsidy programs, and only 65% of children served are from New York City. So how do you plan to finance universal childcare?
I'm incorporating, I'm not trying to sound too repetitive, but I'm incorporating the same vision of this. When we think through, first and foremost, how do we get proportional, who needs to get covered? I do think we need to have a local median income as opposed to an AMI, because AMI is not working. AMI, area median income, is incorporated in Westchester County and other counties, so we don't have actual proportional cost to understand what's happening here. Second, unlike Eric Adams, I actually know how to count, because you saw what happened with many of the nonprofits that were getting hurt because of attendance rates, that they were not going to get funded because of absolute mismanagement. If we are thoughtful around that, that will allow for us to have better opportunities to fund these child care programs, and specifically by not only increasing the revenue that I just highlighted, but being intentional around who needs to be paid and when, which tying to that, we have to have faster nonprofit reimbursement rates that are happening. These child care providers are not getting the support that they need, in large part because we're delaying the payments to nonprofits that need to get that. And so if we treat it in that universal approach, it's finding the gaps of who needs this support. If we're in a scenario where someone is not having coverage from 3 to 6 p.m., our job has to be, how are you connecting them with community centers? How are you actually funding those centers? And how are you actually reimbursing them faster so that that child care can be provided? And in large part, you find the ways through the revenue generation I just highlighted, as well as, since we're in a cost of living crisis, which you are in, I do think you have to also look at the reserves as a consideration. You have $3.1 billion in reserves. That is not including pension and others, where I do think if we're talking about rainy day and people are saying child care and housing are the two fundamental expenses they're trying to figure out how to pay for, how would we then not be considering to utilize that in these next 2 years?
So it's not that you're going to cut from other sources. You want to go into the reserve funds.
Well, it's a both. I mean, you're being a good journalist, because I originally said I would cut as well.
Okay. Okay. So Lauren has another question.
This is why he has his job. I like that right there, you know.
So in your campaign, you've been vocal about protecting immigrant communities, yet you have not yet responded to the recent ICE arrest of Mahmoud Khalil and the ruling by a Louisiana federal judge in
That's
favor.
that's actually not correct. I've responded to Mahmoud Khalil at least 3 times, publicly.
Can you do it again?
One more time.
That is absolutely inhumane what has happened to him, fundamentally. Actually, I think I tweeted it out even 2 or 3 days ago, so yes.
And what would you do in this case right
Forgive
now?
me, was there an extended part of the question? Because I just want to,
Oh, go ahead.
because I heard the part of like I had it.
It was just, what's your stance?
Your stance. Now we know your stance, but also how, as mayor, if you know that ICE agents, immigration agents, are around a campus like Columbia, would you do anything about it, or will you try to coordinate with the federal government? Will you try to stop immigration authorities? Can you stop them?
You can. ICE has no business at our schools, our community centers, our places of worship. It's absolutely wrong and unacceptable. So one of the reasons why I said we have to stay as a sanctuary city, because we got to be very clear that sanctuary city status is so that we're not transferring over data to the feds to abuse us in the way they would clearly try to do. You can't have a scenario where you're detaining someone and not only detain them, you have no idea where he was at for an extended period of time. It's wrong. It's unacceptable. It's inhumane. So we would not coordinate with ICE for unconstitutional behavior such as this. And when we think about what is in our power, it is making sure that you're not allowing NYPD and others to collaborate. Because as a son of immigrants, it would be unacceptable for me. We have allowed this conversation to only be about particular communities. All of us have to be aligned in this gauge. And I'm saying very clearly that I appreciate Raven is showing in real time right there, right? I'm saying very clearly, as mayor, you do not allow them in, as opposed to what we've seen with Eric Adams. But I do think you have to go a step further. You have to say very clearly, there is no reason why ICE is permitted into these places at all. And you are able to utilize the power of city government as well as empowering not just students but families, because let's be clear, they're not just going after one individual. They're going to go after anyone that they deem as a threat, and that is a threat to all of us.
Raquel.
You've proposed a guaranteed income program that would provide regular, no strings attached cash payments to New Yorkers in need. Given the scale of such a program, how will you determine who's eligible, and what criteria will you use to ensure that those who truly need assistance are prioritized?
We would create a local median LMI approach, which we've seen in other places. We've seen this in Connecticut with baby bonds. We've seen this through what's happening in St. Louis. We've seen this in Stockton, California. If you first and foremost are aware of the actual gap that someone has in terms of their wages and income, by having local median income formula being determined, then from there you can assess how do we help them to get there. Whether it be plugging a person into a job that is clearly vacant in city government right now, where you can have that immediate opportunity, whether it be collaborating with philanthropy to be that stopgap, which in large part you're going to need philanthropy to be part of this as well, and or then determining whether it be pulling from other resources within city government to provide that stopgap for that individual. Those three opportunities exist for us to be able to pay for these types of programs and assess the pilot and assess it at scale. You don't just continue it in perpetuity. You actually try to understand how will this work and work effectively.
Katya.
So I want to go back to something you said. You said that you would work in collaboration with employers to withhold federal tax to be sent to DC in response to budget cuts from the federal government. So I want to go back and ask you, would this go to address these gaps in federal budget cuts from the federal government? And how long do you think this could be kept up? What is the plan other than retaliation?
Well, you have to be able to fight back, and you don't stop fighting back when someone is attacking you. And so to this degree, whether it be Medicaid cuts or others that they're pursuing, you have to be consistent in saying very clearly, if you are going after cutting funds to New York City, especially in exchange for unconstitutional behaviors, then our response has to be to hold back what's happening here. And we are seeing every single day with Donald Trump, he will lay out a proposal and essentially in 48 hours stand down when someone checks him. You have to be willing to check a bully. We're seeing this over and over again. He was talking about tariffs. All of a sudden, now there's going to be a 90-day pause. And so I do think you have to be able to articulate, especially for this next 3.5 years that he is still in office, every single time he wants to attack you, there has to be a financial mechanism as a retaliation. Now, to be clear, there's other ways to generate the revenue to pay for these programs if and when cuts happen, as I've laid out throughout. This is just an additional step that has to be on the table for us to seriously look at how we protect ourselves.
And we see now public safety, safety is still a concern for many voters in the city. And we saw the crime numbers going down in the last few months. Would you continue the policies of NYPD Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch, and would you keep her in the job?
Haven't decided on when and who to keep. There's definitely been improvement in some of the programs, but let's be clear, people still don't feel safe despite what the numbers are saying. And so you got to find ways that you have mental health professionals that are actually addressing the mental health concerns as opposed to police officers. You need cops to actually have body cameras on so they can do that properly and thoughtfully. You actually have to find more ways that you're holding people accountable. We don't have a registry on if someone was fired for police injustice and interaction and holding someone accountable in another place. Why would they then be able to keep a job here? Now, to those steps, you have to be more intentional, making sure we actually have safety. And if there are policies that are working, we would definitely look at that. But my whole vision is how do you help people make and keep money in the first place while also simultaneously make sure you can keep them safe.
And if you were mayor and you had a situation like last year when a campus building was taken by some protesters and Mayor Adams decided to send the NYPD in.
Yeah.
Would you do that? Would you do the same
Hell
thing
no.
he did?
Let's be clear. And they also had like a secret group chat where effectively his donors were the ones telling him to do this, right? So it's not like it was any good common sense. It was a group of people who told him go do this or else. So let's be clear. You know, at the end of the day, I know that time is there. It is wrong. It is unconstitutional. Everything that he did in that regard, I would not do that. I would not stand for that. I would not tolerate that. I think any of us in this race should be able to say that and say that emphatically. But to take it a step further, our job is to ensure, especially at a college campus, you know, I was a journal student at Northwestern, so I can appreciate what you all do, and I'm grateful for y'all, that free speech has to be permitted. It is different when someone says, well, I think there's fear and I think there's concern, but sending in the NYPD to harm students, hell no, that's not what any mayor should be doing.
Michael Blake, thank you so much and good luck.
Thank you very much. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you. See you soon. Up next, we have a hedge fund manager, Whitney Tilson, who is coming into the room right now. Mr. Tilson, thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
How are you? Okay, so we're going to start talking about education. You have a lot of experience in education, and Lauren has a question for you.
Hi, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Lauren.
So one of the promises that you make in your campaign is to fix public schools. As a co-founder of Democrats for Education Reform and an advocate for lifting the current charter school cap, how will you address concerns that charter schools divert resources from traditional public schools?
They don't. Charter schools are public schools. They simply operate outside the bureaucracy. I've been on the board of KIPP charter schools for more than 20 years. 97% of our funding is public. We're free and open to all students. There are no longer any charter lotteries due to under-enrollment across the city. And actually, according to state law, there's hold harmless for so a student who transfers into a KIPP, we get funding, and the old school continues to get funding as well. So charter schools are about 15% of New York City public schools. A student who attends KIPP has 3 times the likelihood of graduating from college, for example. So, and we have one of the best charter sectors. It's not just KIPP. We have one of the best charter sectors in the country here. Our schools, every 5 years, are subject to renewal, and if any charter fails to demonstrate every 5 years that they are delivering results for kids, they can and will, and it has happened many times, lose their charter. I don't understand why the other 85% of public schools in New York City aren't subject to the same accountability to deliver for students.
So what would you do with the traditional public schools? So would you implement some of the ways of teaching that successful charter schools implement, or would you lift the cap and have more charter schools and eliminate traditional public schools?
For sure, I would lift the cap. It's an artificial cap, though that is not a huge barrier at this point. Again, New York City public schools have been losing students. Generally speaking, the big themes are choice and accountability. Give parents options for what they think is best for their child, and charter schools are an option. There are many great New York City regular public schools as well. Generally speaking, you want to be expanding what's working and rewarding those schools. This is what's really missing, is any degree of accountability for schools that are totally failing kids. As an example of beyond charter schools, New York has 9 specialized high schools. Stuyvesant would be the best known of them. Under Mayor Bloomberg, 4 of those schools were opened under Mayor Bloomberg. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about, where why stop at 9? Let's open more of those schools because there's they're very difficult to get into with the high stakes tests and all. Clearly, there's much more demand. So why aren't we expanding what there is lots of demand for? But we also need to hold people accountable for failure.
Okay, and Raquel has a question on the economy.
You aim to grow the city's economy by 50% in a decade. What specific industries will you prioritize, and how will this address the 25% poverty rate?
By the way, 50% over a decade is about 4.1% compounded, so this is not some Herculean pie in the sky number. And I'm the only candidate. I've been to so many mayoral forums, and I would say 99% of the discussion, the questions, the answers all focus on how to spend tax dollars. And my overall approach is one focused on growth and prosperity and abundance. That is where the tax dollars come from. So to your question, how do you achieve that? I think it's up and down the spectrum. We are obviously have been for centuries a world financial center, trade, technology. We have an enormous, thriving entrepreneurial tech community as well, not just the Googles and the Facebooks that are located here, then all the way down to I've been a small business owner, built a half dozen small businesses over the last 30 years I've been in the city. The small business owners are getting squeezed from every side and easing, but across the board, what are they talking about? It's number one, crime and safety and a sense of safety for their employees, but also literally for their stores. Talk to any small business owner, and they, over the last few years, have really been hurt by just petty crime, people just coming in and sweeping their shelves. And so since Commissioner Tisch took over last November, there's been more of an emphasis on enforcing lower level misdemeanors and all, and that is translating into a significant drop in serious crime as well. So there is improvement. Mayor Adams, on his fourth attempt, finally got a great police commissioner, and I would keep her. She would be the first person I would try to keep from the current administration. But we need changes to the state law as well, and kudos to Governor Hochul for holding up the budget to change the discovery reform law and the involuntary confinement law as well, are the two big things that are holding up the budget.
Lauren has a question now on public transit.
Yes, you suggested free public transit as a cost-saving measure. So how would this be funded without cutting existing services?
I don't, it is not on my website, free public transit. I don't think it's practical. What I would like to do is, an idea that I'm exploring is making wider low-cost fares for buses, and of the 472 subway stations in this city, I would like to experiment with taking the 5%, for example, in the lowest income communities and removing the turnstiles, making subways free there as an experiment to see whether that would be an economic revitalization tool. I'm not sure. I haven't committed to it yet because I'm not sure we can afford it, and particularly with the economy likely heading into a recession and with federal budget cuts coming, we need to be thinking about tightening our belts. And all I'm hearing from the other candidates is more spending programs.
But you still think that you'll be able to grow the New York City economy 50% in 10 years?
That's a 10-year objective. In the short term, there are going to be some headwinds for sure.
Okay. Kate has the next question.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this is a question about protesting on college campuses. I was reading through a tweet that you published after the University of Michigan banned a pro-Palestine student group. I'm going to read something that you tweeted there. You said, "I'll happily cooperate with federal authorities to revoke student visas of any students breaking the law, especially those from countries hostile to the U.S." Yeah. We were wondering, should pro-Palestinian protesters on Columbia's campus lose their student visa and be deported?
If they're breaking the law, yes. I have personal experience with this. My daughters are Jewish. One of them is in college right now. And I respect free speech. When it crosses the line into illegal actions, I think that should be punished in terms of, as appropriate, the degree of law breaking by school punishment. But I think if you are not a citizen, you're here on a student visa, you had better behave yourself and not break our laws in any way.
So do you agree with Secretary of State Marco Rubio and the measures he has taken?
No, I think the Trump administration, as is typical, has gone too far and behaved in a lawless and authoritarian way. If they can show illegal behavior, not just protests, which I think should be protected, at that point there should be consequences. And I'll also point out in the case of Mohammed Khalil that there's a difference between someone who's here on a student visa versus someone who's a green card holder.
Okay. Raquel has the next question.
This question has to do with homelessness. You plan to solve homelessness in your first term. This you would do by deterring homeless people from sleeping on the streets and subways. What's your plan to do that, and how will you ensure it's done with dignity, given your support for involuntary confinement?
Yes, I don't. About 90% of New York City's homeless have a roof over their heads every night. We have an enormous and costly shelter system that's not very well managed, but at least it provides shelter. About 10%, about 4,100, mostly single men suffering from mental illness and or substance abuse, are out on our streets every night, and they are suffering. It is a serious quality of life issue for the city. And I don't often say this, but I think we should do what Florida did, which is the state of Florida banned camping, i.e. sleeping out overnight in public spaces across the state. I think New York City should do what Jacksonville has done, which is I've spent time talking to someone from a community foundation down there, and they said the law is the best thing that has ever happened to their street homeless, that they led with compassion, that it forced the city government to allocate more funding for more shelters, for storage for the homeless people's possessions. One of the big issues, if they go into a shelter, what do they do with the shopping cart with all of their possessions? And that they have solved this problem. And he said the following words, which I thought captured my feelings as well. He says, "We have led with compassion," and it hasn't been just going out and arresting everybody. It's instead providing them a decent shelter option, but they are required to take it. They do not have the choice to sleep out in public spaces. I don't think any civilized city should allow that.
Lauren?
Yeah, kind of going off of that, you propose expanding psychiatric care beds. How will you staff these facilities amid New York City's healthcare worker shortage?
Yeah, it's going to have to be done with the state. The state has really caused this problem. In 1960, New York State had 95,000 long-term psychiatric beds. Today, it's 3,500. I asked someone close to this, well, what did you do with the 90,000 people? And the answer was, in many cases, we gave them a bus ticket to the Port Authority. That was a terrible public policy mistake. The system, no doubt, appropriately could shrink, but we overshrunk it, and a lot of people ended up out on our streets who, it's not a short-term issue. They need a long-term psychiatric facility to care for them the rest of their lives, and we need to do that. It's costly. It will involve, I think, reopening some facilities that have been closed, and I'm going to, as mayor, have to work with the state to fund this.
Mr. Tilson, so far in the polls, you're hardly registering.
Yeah.
Name recognition is really low at this point. You've been successful in finance. You're wealthy. Why are you doing this?
Because when I decided to run, it was in November after the election. I was, as a lifelong Democrat, was shocked by the results of the election, where 90% of U.S. counties swung toward Donald Trump. And I said, we Democrats need to look in a mirror and say to ourselves that we need to manage the cities and states that we control better. And because I think the average American looks at New York, San Francisco, a handful of other cities and states, and says, if that's what you Democrats are offering, I'll hold my nose and vote for the other guy, that guy. So then I looked at the field and a bunch of career politicians, looked at my city in decline, crime going up, impossible to build housing, talking to business people who say their dealings with the city, the most common quote I hear is, quote, they treat us like the enemy, and said, I think there's a lane for an outsider, someone who's not a career politician, to go straight to the voters who are fed up with how the career politicians are running the city. So that's the lane. It's a narrow lane. It's a very difficult lane in a closed primary off-season like this. I have not yet broken through, but
what are you doing for the next 2 months?
Yeah,
to break through?
Doing things like this, talking to the media, going out and doing a lot of canvassing with voters, and hopefully in the near future we'll get matching funding from the city. That was a key element. I'm not Mike Bloomberg, who can self-fund $73 million to buy name recognition. But I also felt like it was important to have in the race. One of two things is going to happen. I was going to win, great. If I didn't win, at least I would be a voice for an independent, pro-business, pro-charter school, the issues that I cared about, that it was important that those voices, that there be a voice like that in the race.
Had you been mayor a year ago, would you have sent in the NYPD here on campus?
Yes, I know that's not going to win me many fans in the room, but again, I fully support peaceful protest as much as I agree with it. When it comes to storming buildings and vandalism and so forth, I would have liked to think campus security there should have been more campus security. Hamilton Hall was the obvious target, and they would have prevented it from being taken over. Generally, I would rather let Columbia's internal security handle its own protests, but when things got out of control, it was creating a very unsafe environment for Jewish students on campus, and that's unacceptable. And all I would ask, I'm not asking for special treatment for my daughters who are Jewish, one of whom is a senior in college at Carleton, actually. I'm asking you to consider, what if the Columbia Christian Students Association was holding protests and storming buildings to protest LGBTQ students on campus? What if the National Association for the Advancement of White People was holding protests against black students on campus? The reaction by the university to shut that down would be so fast it'd make your head spin. But when Jews were the target, this administration certainly initially did very little, and it created a very unsafe environment for Jewish students on campus. So one minority was not being, and attacks and harassment and a feeling of insecurity for them was not being handled with the same degree as it would have been for other minorities.
Mr. Tilson, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you. See you soon. Thank you. Up next, independent candidate Jim Walden. Nobody. We don't. Yeah. Mr. Walden, how are you? Good to see you again. Thank you.
I'm going to follow your advice and just give very short, pithy answers. Morning, everyone.
We'll do that. We'll do that. Thank you so much for being here. You're an independent candidate, so you're not running in the June primary.
Correct.
So far, your name recognition, like Whitney Tilson's, is really low. So from now till November, not that we have other independent candidates with larger name recognition, like Mayor Eric Adams, how do you break through?
Yeah, so I guess we'll see, right? First of all, in the first poll for the general election, I actually did much better than I thought I was going to do. We've done a little bit of canvassing and a lot of voter outreach, but I didn't think I was going to get 4.1% in the first poll, so that was a positive surprise. And secondly, I'm just going to continue the ground game. I'm very excited to do this. I'm happy to talk about the vision issue, but New York City needs this right now, and so I've been going to some of the hardest hit communities in the city to start my campaign. I'm not going to fancy reception rooms where people pat me on the back and tell me how great I am. I'm going to Brownsville and East Flatbush and the Bronx and meeting people and connecting with business owners and regular New Yorkers. And so far it's been amazing. It's been really great, and people are really tired of the political machine. They want outside leadership, and now's a great time for it.
Okay, we're going to start with a question on public safety with Lauren.
Lori?
Lauren.
Lauren. Hi, Lauren.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So you said that more cops on the street would be your number one issue that all candidates should back. How do you plan to increase the police force when the NYPD is currently struggling to fill vacant positions?
Yeah, so safety, I would say, is my number one issue. And in terms of the question, I'm going to try to answer it, but if I don't answer it, come back at me, because I want to make sure I answer questions. The way that we get police officers on the street is a little bit complicated, but I can summarize it as follows. People have decried the overtime budget that NYPD has, suggesting that the cops aren't doing their jobs, and it's really not true. Those people don't know police, don't talk to police, and don't really actually understand how difficult it is. But if we use 56% of the overtime budget from the last cycle, we could hire 9,000 new police officers at higher salaries. What we need to get better cops and better candidates and more police officers is a better package of benefits and more authority to do their jobs instead of being micromanaged. And the scary statistic that you really should be paying attention to is not how many cops we have now, because now we're at an incredible low, right? We have about 34,000 cops when we had 40,000 just 4 or 5 years before the pandemic. But with retirements and police officers looking to leave New York City, we could be down a total of 25% by the end of the year. That would be terrifying. So it is very important to get police on the street. It's also important to make sure that we train them in a way that makes them better equipped to go into black and brown communities and do a positive job and have a positive impact. And both of those things are important to me, and I'm happy to talk about either. But that was beyond your question. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, well,
Good.
going off of that, you recently told the New York Post that you want to limit the city council's power over police,
Yes.
Micromanaging, as you said. How do you strike the balance between micromanaging and accountability for how the police are run?
That's a fantastic question. And let me just clarify what the Post didn't cover is there's already a provision in the city charter that's supposed to put guardrails on the city council's ability to impact things like police operations. It's just that guardrail is not working. We need a better guardrail. So all my proposal is going to do is increase the threshold for votes so that if whoever the mayor is, whoever he or she turns out to be at the end of this race, if the mayor designates based on police expertise that a bill is going to have a negative impact on operations, that there's a higher vote threshold in the city council. Once it's designated, the city council needs a 2/3 majority, and if the mayor vetoes it based on police experience, then it goes up to 3/4 to override the veto. So I don't think that is inconsistent at all with holding the police accountable. And in fact, I have the most ambitious plan that a lot of the police are not going to like in order to get police accountability. And that is to take the watchdog functions out of NYPD and other agencies and put them into a new agency that's independent of City Hall that is finally going to get all the corruption and abuse out of New York City government. And one of the problems that we have is that we have internal watchdogs that are supposed to be getting rid of the bad apples. And those processes have not worked very well over time. So if we take all of that infrastructure out and we put it in an independent agency that functions like the comptroller, or in my view, it should replace the public advocate, the person that heads that office will be apolitical, right? They will not report to the mayor. They're not going to be elected. And frankly, if there's a vacancy at City Hall, that person will be a much better replacement for the mayor. So that we're not relying on someone like the public advocate who has very, very limited experience in running anything as serious as City Hall.
Raquel has a question on education.
Hi, Raquel.
Hello.
Hello.
You've said that you hope to improve education outcomes by putting more funding into students and less into administration. What does that mean in practice?
Yeah, so that's a fantastic question, and I'm going to answer it in two different ways. I'm going to talk about the waste in the Department of Education, and then I'm going to talk about where I want to redirect that money, like from day one. I mean, it won't really be day one, but it'll be as close as possible. Number one, DOE is a significant part of our budget, and you would think that that means that a lot of money gets to schools and kids. And guess what? It doesn't. 40% of every dollar is spent on administrative costs. That has got to change, right? There is way too much administrative waste in the Department of Education, and I don't want anyone to think I'm going to doge it. That's obviously a ridiculous chainsaw approach, but there are tactical ways to reduce the administrative costs to get more money to schools. Where am I going to put that money? Proficiency rates in our schools are still atrocious. We're New York City, for Christ's sake. There's $1 trillion of value that goes through this city every year. We're the greatest city in the world. And our proficiency rates for 4th and 8th graders hover around 40 or 50%, depending on what survey you look at. That's ridiculous for basic reading and for basic math skills. That means the majority of kids are having their educational futures essentially eliminated before they get out of primary school. And that's not acceptable. And so what we need to do is what every single educational expert will tell you. Number one, you have to reduce the class size, particularly in K through 3, to get down to manageable numbers to teach basic reading and math. And I'm not talking about 20 kids per class, I'm talking about 8 to 10 kids per class. And secondly, you need to invest in teacher infrastructure to get subject matter experts on reading and math into those classrooms. So when I start, obviously starting system-wide would be super expensive, and I'm very skeptical of people that promise lots of free things and lots of services and they have no plan to pay for it. So I'm going to start with a pilot program that takes the worst performing schools, right? Because if you think about it, if the average is somewhere between 40 and 50%, that means that the low is much worse than that. So we're going to start with the schools that are performing poorly, and we're going to reduce the class sizes to that number, and we're going to provide additional supports for basic reading and basic math, and then we're going to test and audit. And if that program works and it proves the point that has been, is covered in so many different studies, then we'll expand it citywide. Did I answer your question? Okay, good.
Lauren, or Kate, okay.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
My name is Kate. Nice to meet you.
Nice
Thank
to
you
meet
for being here today.
Thank you for coming, or for having me.
So I'm actually going to jump to a question regarding demonstrations and rights to protest. So as part of your platform, you said that as mayor, you want to propose a law to make face covering illegal for participants in a demonstration. Now, news just came out that a student from Columbia University, Mosem Malawi, am I correct? Yes, was just arrested by ICE. Allegedly, they are a green card holder. And so we're probably looking at a situation in which somebody that is actually not on a student visa is facing some form of procedure for deportation. Now, I'm asking you this question about face covering for a specific reason. One of our affiliates at Columbia University, Mahmoud Khalil, was arrested by ICE. He was arrested by ICE after his face was published online because he decided not to wear face covering during the demonstrations at Columbia. My question for you regarding face covering is, are you concerned about this policy chilling or potentially leading protesters to be doxxed as part of being part of demonstrations?
Yeah. So first of all, that's a fantastic question. And secondly, I'm going to answer you by saying this. There really should be one rule that applies to everyone, whether it's demonstrators in support of Palestine here or it's demonstrators at other campuses or in other places in the city. And face coverings has never been a good idea. This is why we got rid of it with the KKK. This is what allows people to go from speech to hate conduct because there's no consequences. So now we're in a different age, right? That the KKK ban on face covering was, decades and decades ago, but we're faced with the same reality, right? Which is the lack of face covering did not cause his arrest and deportation, right? Face coverings are a bad policy regardless of who the protesters are, right? And so I don't believe that those two things are necessarily linked, and I think that there needs to be ample protection for free speech, even if it's hate speech. But when that when that speech goes into conduct, we need to identify the people who are responsible for the conduct, because sometimes that conduct results in dead people. And so that's the balance I would strike, right? I would not be over-policing free speech, obviously. That would be a bad policy. But I would be keeping a close eye on where that conduct went from speech, where that activity went from speech to hate conduct, which then violates the law. Did I answer your question?
Just a very quick follow-up.
Sure.
Do you believe that right now there's enough protections for people participating in protests of any kind?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point, and the answer is I think it's an evolving situation. I mean, of course, I think that we can always do better, but I also think that there's a fair point that, and I heard Whitney Tilson's answer on this, and I believe in this as well. I got to tell you that if there was a protester that went into a trans community and started attacking trans women and doing some of the things that the protesters were doing on Columbia's campus to Jewish students, I would be super concerned about that, just as concerned as I would be with the conduct here vis-a-vis Jews. So I think we have to have balance, and we have to have one standard, and obviously everything that we can do to protect speech, we need to. But we have to have better plans when tempers flare and emotions rise to make sure that we keep well-meaning people within the right guardrails and help them understand where their conduct can cross the line. And that's where I think Columbia could have done a better job once it saw these protests happening, and frankly where many other institutions have fallen down, which is they see tempers rise, right? What they really should be doing is teaching people the rules of the road, how to keep protests safe. And that gets rid of 90% of the problem. And that's really what institutions like Columbia should be doing, is having monitors for these situations where they start seeing that there's big groups of people, to make sure that the organizers, who may be well-meaning, have the supports that they need to stop speech from turning into conduct. Did I answer your question?
I would assume then that you would have sent the NYPD in last year.
No. So the mayor doesn't send the police anywhere. The police commissioner does. Now, if the police commissioner, no, I'm going to answer the question. I'm not going to duck it. If the police commissioner called me and said, "Hey, boss, what should we do with respect to Columbia?" The first thing that I would have done is I would have come to Columbia's campus myself. Right, as the mayor, if I had seen that situation evolving, I would live by the words that you just heard me speak, which is I would have gotten on a bike or a scooter or a car and come to Columbia and tried to help work with the administration to de-escalate, to avoid a lot of what happened.
With an NYPD escort.
Wait.
Yeah.
No, not with them.
Okay.
Well, I think I have to have some number of officers, but certainly not with like a whole contingent of people. I've dealt with some pretty unsafe situations in my life, much more unsafe than student protesters, for Christ's sakes. But then if push came to shove, you're asking me, would I? I wouldn't send the police for things like building takeovers. I really wouldn't. I've seen it happen on my own campus when I was in college, and I didn't see the footage here, so I didn't look at it to see if there was really unsafe situations. But I would give students some room, right, without flooding. But just to be clear, I'm sorry, I'll be quick. I would have sent the police. I would have. if I saw that there were groups of protesters that were surrounding Jewish kids and trying to harass and intimidate them. The same way I would have done if they were Muslim victims, the same way I would have done if they were trans victims. The mayor's here to protect people, and at this period of time, whether it's Asians, Jewish people, the trans community, we have surges in hate crimes, and these things are tied, right? When people see actions, they oftentimes copycat it, and that's where we've seen spikes. And I don't know if people are dialed into this. The largest spike in the last 3 years in hate crimes, Jewish New Yorkers.
Okay. We have a quick question, last question on transit with Lauren.
Okay.
You want to remove congestion pricing and instead use an incentive-based plan to move people away from cars. So what would that incentive be?
Yeah. So to be clear, my answer to this has been consistent since the race. And believe me, I understand that this was unpopular. But for many of the things that I'm talking about, when they're unpopular, I think it's important as someone who's not a politician to get the information out there so that people can choose, and they may not choose me. Congestion pricing goes to a billy club, not even just a stick, it goes to a billy club. It started at $15 an hour, then it dropped to $9 an hour. As someone that started at the bottom end of the economic ladder, I can't even imagine what would happen if I was trying to get to my job at Chick-fil-A and I had to pay $9 out of a salary that was dismal to begin with. So I would start with planning. If planning didn't work, then I'd go to incentives. And if incentives that it didn't work, then I would go to some form of tax. I would start low and then go higher if the objectives weren't met by the lower threshold. Planning, let me give you just one example. I would have taken parking garages out of the zone, right? If I wanted less cars in a particular area, I would get rid of the thing that attracts cars, which is parking garages, and I would have put them outside, some number of them outside the zone with electric slots so that people had an incentive if they were going to drive in anyway to transition their gas-burning cars to electric cars. That's good urban planning, right? That would be a tangible way to kill two policy birds with one stone. If that didn't work, then I'd go to incentives. I would say to drivers, okay, we know that there are a certain number of people that are driving. We will give you the following incentives in order to not drive. We'll give you free parking. We will give you transit passes. We will give you safer subways and buses that run on time as opposed to the way it was rolled out now. And then if I had gotten to a place where I said, you know, the congestion is still not where we need it to be and carbon isn't where we need it to be, then I would start with low taxes and I would make clear exemptions, including things like public servants. Like, we shouldn't make public servants be paying a congestion tax if they have to come into the city for their jobs and they're in their outer boroughs and for whatever reason they're in a transit desert, for example, so they can't really get on a bus or a subway easily. Did I answer your question?
When was the last time you took the subway?
Last week, late last week.
Do you use it often?
I would say not as often as I'd like, but I use it, I don't know, couple times a week.
You would like to use it more, so you don't use it more because?
Just because I have to go around to a lot of different places, and it's oftentimes just easier to have a car, to tell you the truth.
Got it. Thank you so much. Attorney Jim Walden, independent candidate.
Thank you.
So he'll be on the ballot in November. Thank you. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure. Thank you. So we do have Jessica Ramos. She's not there yet. She's not there yet? Okay. We don't have anybody there yet, right? I know. They don't have time for it. Okay, so next we're going to have Queens State Senator Jessica Ramos. After that, we're going to have Brooklyn State Senator Zelnor Myrie. And right after that, nobody leaves because we're going to have a QR code with a quick poll that we want you to fill out. It's going to take less than a minute, but it's going to be really important to have some sort of like to gauge how the candidates you listened today, were here today, how you thought they did. Okay, I think it's really important. I know that many of you, I'm sure, are registered voters. Some others are not. Some others are not U.S. citizens, so you cannot participate in the election. But you are all New Yorkers, and as New Yorkers, you have a stake in this election. So we are waiting for State Senator Jessica Ramos in a minute. She'll be with us, so just be patient for a second. And any questions from the audience so far? Any thoughts from anybody? Yes.
Thank you for this. It's been really enlightening. I was just wondering whether it's due to time constraints or other reasons why we haven't seen more of a pushback on some of the things that two mayoral candidates have said one after the other.
Right.
I've been outright live actually about a lot of student protests.
Yes. So what we are trying to do is like to be fair with the time with the candidates. We have limited time. We want them to give us like answers on many different issues. We don't want to fact check them in the moment just because we only have 15 minutes. Some of these candidates, people have barely heard from them, and we want to give them that opportunity because we believe that not just the candidates with a lot of money, fundraising a lot of money, have the opportunity to have their name there. Obviously, anytime you interview elected officials or political candidates, you're going to have that problem that some of them are going to not tell the truth or give their take on issues that might not be totally accurate. Sometimes we're going to push, but some others we're just going to go with it and take the answer to speak for itself, and it's going to be out there on YouTube. So if anybody wants to offer a rebuttal, anybody can do it online as well. But sometimes we don't want to do just one issue, like you saw. If you go out there, this is a mayoral candidate forum. You go out there, and most New Yorkers and city newsroom students went out there and asked New Yorkers what their top issues were. And most people are talking about housing, affordability, public safety. So we want to make sure we get the candidates also on those issues. Yeah. Yes.
What is your take on the most recent events of these well-popular candidates, for example, Eric Adams, who is our mayor, and former Governor Mayoral Forum? In an even playing field, I believe that all these candidates who are running for office and the New Yorkers want to see what their opinions are.
Yep.
What do you think? What do you take on them, honestly, being missing in action?
Oh, I have no opinion for sure. So what I would say about that, we invited several candidates. We invited also to come Republican candidate Curtis Lewa to come today. We invited Assembly Member Soran Mamdani. Initially, he said yes, he was going to come, but then a couple weeks ago, he decided not to. We also invited City Controller Brad Lander, who initially 5 months ago, personally, he told me yes, he would do it. Then his campaign decided that they weren't interested. And former Governor Andrew Cuomo, I can tell you, like even yesterday, I was walking home and I saw him in the middle of the street, and I made my last pitch to him personally. He told me he was going to check his schedule, but then he also told me that he was having that endorsement event with 32PJ and the Hotel and Trades Gaming Trades Union. So his campaign at the beginning was thinking about it. Then, as you can see, they thought that they didn't want to bring him here. If you have a big name recognition right now, maybe you want to limit the risk, and you don't want to be in too many public forums saying too many things. That's how politics works.
Is that too early to say too many things?
I'm sorry?
Is it just too early to say too many things?
Not only too early, but if you're doing well in the polls and you have name recognition, maybe you want to spend your time doing other stuff to put yourself out there instead of just like answering questions. That might be tricky, right? So, do we have her yet? No? She's trying to get in? Okay. Oh, she's there. Okay.
No.
Not her?
Not her yet. We just wanted to make sure we had the right
We wanted to
name.
make sure it was right.
Okay. Any other questions while we wait? Yes.
I just recently finished working a year in the mayor's office of immigrant affairs, and I think in the early half of the session there were some really great questions dedicated to kind of citywide sanctuary city policy and specific kind of ICE cooperation, working with the federal government and ICE detainers and things like that. I was wondering, could there be moving forward more consistent questions about cooperation and specifically city funding towards pro-immigrant programs in the city? I don't know if folks watched, like back in March, huge amount of like budget cuts towards pro-immigrant programs, including the legal support hotline. So I'm wondering if there might be more questions directed to what like local pro-immigration resources would be expanded under the different tenures of prospective mayoral candidates.
I think we have some questions coming up, right?
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. She's having issues logging in.
Asterisks not with her physically, so she's walking it through.
Okay. Should I send her a text message? Is she on her phone or computer?
I don't know because I'm talking to Ashley.
Okay.
I say we can swap if we have to.
Do we have Myrie yet? No.
If it's time. She's getting on.
Right now? Okay.
She's
Okay, so we'll continue right now. Okay, she's there.
Hello?
Senator Ramos, can you hear us?
I can.
Okay, thank you
How
so
is
much.
everyone?
Thank you so much for being with us right now. We're going to, okay, we have you over there. So thank you for being with us today, even if it's just via Zoom. We want to start the questions with public safety and transit. So Raquel has a question for you right now.
Senator, thank you for being here. Subway crime is often linked to individuals experiencing untreated mental illness. You've made mental illness health funding a priority. How would your plan ensure that low-income New Yorkers, especially those who are homeless or at risk, can access consistent mental health care before incidents happen on the subway?
This is a great question. Thank you so much. You know, I think there are many components that feed into the level of mental health services that we need in order to help people. First and foremost, mental health needs to be weaved into every aspect of our lives, whether we're talking about school or whether we're talking about our workplaces, and certainly when it comes to building the number of supportive housing units that we need. But beyond that, the New York City hospital system shouldn't just be about our physical health, it should be about our mental health too. So building out the capacity with the psychiatric beds that we need by even reopening the mental health institutions that former Governor Cuomo closed is really important to getting people off the street instead of waiting for them to hurt themselves or hurt someone else, which is the system we have right now and isn't working very well. Because if you take the subway every day like I do, well then you know that many people display erratic behavior that can feel unpredictable. And this is why even though we see a lot of the crime data go down, the perception of crime has not really gone down. And so we want to make sure that we are providing housing first for people who are struggling, and again, making sure that we have the right psychiatric facilities in order to take mental health seriously. I have said that I would want to declare a mental health state of emergency on day one of my administration, because that would allow me as mayor to access many of the funding tools that are needed to get these buildings up and running as soon as possible. But the other component here is making sure that we actually have the mental health professionals that are needed in order to staff and equip those psychiatric centers and our health and hospitals. We need everything from more social workers to more cognitive and behavioral therapists, and in the languages that New Yorkers speak. This is another important component, especially when we're talking about addressing mental health for people who are not doing very well in our economy, and under the circumstances with which we're living. We have to make sure that it's accessible, and actually in building a care economy in this way, and in the way of universal child care and elder care, that's one of the great ways that we could take control of our economy back by putting actually in the communities that have been hardest hit by these crises.
With a follow-up.
I have a follow-up. You talk about taking the subway every day. What are the biggest changes do you think that needs to be done to improve rider experience?
In terms of transit, public safety, I mean, maybe I'll tie both. I would start by saying, just to tie in the mental health services, that train stations across the 5 boroughs have a lot of retail space that is vacant, and there are also stations with large spaces that could accommodate a desk or two from the city to be a help desk and help people orient towards the services that they need, and especially having someone there who can specialize in the people who regularly frequent the train stations, looking for shelter, and perhaps are living with a severe mental illness. I think it's part and parcel with actually dispatching social workers into our transit system. I wish, if I had my way, I think that the New York City mayor should be able to appoint the New York City Transit president, but alas, that is largely in the hands of the governor and our state legislature. So as mayor, my job would be really to maintain trains as safe as I can, but then when it comes to buses, making sure that we're actually keeping our promise to New Yorkers about bus lanes, and actually investing in bus rapid transit so that even if it's after the implementation of congestion pricing, we're finally building out the system of buses that reaches out into the farthest corners of the boroughs in order to bring people into Manhattan as needed. But the reality is that over the past several years, exacerbated during the pandemic, has been the decentralization of Manhattan in our economy and in the lives of New Yorkers, where the economy has actually picked up more in the outer boroughs, which is why I'm so excited about the IBX line that would connect Queens to Brooklyn, actually Jackson Heights, where I'm from, to Bay Ridge specifically. And thinking through those types of investments is really where we ought to be, especially in our relationship with the state, that the next mayor of the city of New York should definitely have a very good working relationship with Governor Hochul, who will still be governor on January 1st next year.
Kate?
Yeah, so Senator, thank you for speaking with us today. So there are ongoing tensions on this very campus, actually, surrounding free speech, administrative accountability, campus safety, and immigration. What would be your role as the mayor to ensure both students' rights and the safety of the communities that live on these campuses?
Well, let me say that I'm proudly the daughter of formerly undocumented immigrants from Colombia. I'm the first American born in my family. My father was taken in an immigration raid when I was a baby. I don't remember, but my older sister and my mom do. And the uncertainty and the worry that takes place in a family when someone has been taken, especially if it's the breadwinner, is something that I really wish more taxpayers understood, how it affects our bottom line, even in having to deploy more services for that family. And at a time when there is such deep division, whether it be about global conflicts or even domestic issues with the current Trump administration, it's very important that we protect First Amendment rights to free speech for students, for faculty, and for everyone. I want to make sure, of course, that it doesn't blur the line of where people start feeling unsafe. And that's where the difficulty and the work really lies, is figuring out where that line stands in between allowing people to exercise their right to free speech, especially on a college campus, where students should have the opportunity to experiment and figure out and discuss with others how to solve conflicts. But also to, of course, make sure that people feel safe with what's being said. But what's important is that we keep ICE away from schools, away from churches, away from hospitals, libraries, or any other public institution, so that all New Yorkers feel safe. I think the situation that happened with Mahmoud Khalil is an interesting one because he's a green card holder. And so for the lack of paths to a work permit and to a green card, we shouldn't be making it necessarily much more difficult for people who have not necessarily broken the law. Reminding everybody, of course, that crossing the border is a civil penalty and not a criminal one. So we have to protect the economic backbone of this city, which is largely the immigrant community, especially at a time when we are seeing shortages in nurses and doctors, in teachers, in firefighters and police officers. We actually need more professionals to be able to run our city much more effectively. So it's never the time to be xenophobic.
Off of that, Lauren has a question.
Yes. Hi, Senator Ramos. If you were mayor, how would you approach your relationship with the Trump administration while this administration is targeting the immigrant community that you serve?
Well, I think that confronting Trump is largely about outsmarting them and making sure that we show New Yorkers that the mayor has a backbone and that there are times to throw rocks, and certainly there is a lot of anguish and uncertainty coming from the White House. I mean, everywhere I go in this city, people tell me that they're living with increased anxiety, that they're having trouble sleeping, and they just want to know that there's a city hall that's fighting back and that doesn't sell them out like Eric Adams has. I'm trying to lay the groundwork for that right now. In the state Senate, just about 2 weeks ago, I introduced a bill called the Recourse Act. It's a bill that would compel the state comptroller to tabulate all of the federal funding that we receive, every dime, so that if and when Donald Trump and his administration remove federal funding unlawfully, that we are able to withhold our taxes from the federal government. And this, of course, is something that we could do a version of at the city level as well. But what's important is that we're able to equip the governor and all of our executives with our greatest leverage, which is people and our tax-paying dollars. So in that way, we're actually playing chess with Donald Trump and not rolling over to his demands, understanding that we have an affordable housing crisis, we have a climate crisis, we have many other challenges that are going to require federal funding, and when reason does not work with an administration, we're just going to have to bring a gun to a gunfight.
Raquel has another question.
So as it relates, you talk about affordable housing. Regarding City of Yes, you said that you would want to see more subsidized developments and tenant protections as requested by the council. If elected, would you throw your support into making City of Yes a reality, and how would you address its shortcomings?
Well, I don't see City of Yes as an affordable housing plan. I see City of Yes as an upzoning plan of sorts. It is a framework for the city to consider how it is that, or where it is that we can build the affordable housing units that are in high demand right now in our city. I mean, we're living the biggest homelessness crisis of our time, and so many of the people who are homeless in our city are children. So we don't just need affordable housing. We need housing to raise families in, dignified housing. So I think largely for a long time, New York City has prayed that affordable housing is magically going to trickle down from all of these tax abatements that are given to big real estate, without actually looking at some of the solutions that have been hiding in plain sight for a while. We did a good job with the Mitchell-Lama program many decades ago, but actually the precursor to the Mitchell-Lama program was a leveraging of taxpayer dollars with union pension funds. I currently carry a bill in the state Senate called the Jobs and Housing Act, which I'd be able to do outright as mayor, in making sure that, yes, we play with the public pension funds, but also the private sector funds from the AFL-CIO Housing Investment Trust, so that we can create a steady stream of building housing that doesn't just include low-income rentals, but actually also includes modest equity homeownership opportunities, just like we've seen in Co-op City, in the Bronx, in Electchester in Queens, in Penn South in Manhattan, Warboss out in Brooklyn by Coney Island. I mean, this is the way New York City used to build affordable housing from the 1920s to the 1960s. And there's no reason why we shouldn't revisit that, so that instead of just waiting for affordable housing to trickle down and for big real estate to take mercy of us, that we're actually building housing for ourselves and making a real dent into the growing demand there is. I mean,
very quickly,
Sorry.
we're running out of time, Senator. Two quick questions. The number one question would be, given your close relationship with the Working Families Party, Make the Road Action, those are organizations that you've worked with throughout your career. Why do you think you're not getting those endorsements?
Well, I think we've been tremendous allies on many of the legislation pushes that we've seen at the state level. I think that we have a disagreement in the breadth of working class New Yorkers that should be engaged in the election. I want to make sure that we are talking to real working class communities that honestly not just reelected me for Senate, but also voted for Trump in the last election. So being able to really speak to those who are looking for greater economic opportunity is much more in line with the messaging, with what I believe will be a winning message in this election.
And yes or no, had you been mayor of the city a year ago, would you have sent in the NYPD here into campus? No. Thank you so much, and good luck, Senator Ramos.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we have it, right? Okay. Brooklyn State Senator Zelnor Myrie, thank you for being with us. How are you today?
I am good. Sorry, just making sure I'm squared away here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We're going to start with a question from Lauren.
Hi, Senator. You've received an endorsement by the New York Working Families Party alongside candidate Adams, Lander, and Mamdani. They're expected to announce at least a first choice candidate this month. What sets you apart?
I'm a born and raised New Yorker. I have lived experience, but I've also demonstrated in my time in the state legislature that I know how to deliver for New Yorkers. whether that was the first in the nation law on gun safety to hold members of the gun industry accountable for the gun violence happening in our communities, whether it was ensuring that generational wealth that was being stolen from Black homeowners all across this city actually had a measure of accountability, making deed theft a crime, or whether it was leading on protecting our democracy, particularly in a moment like where we find ourselves now with our democracy under attack. I authored the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act, the strongest state-level voting protections in the entire country. I chaired the Elections Committee for 6 years, where we made over 110 changes to the election law. That ability to actually deliver for New Yorkers is what we need in this moment, and I put forward a bold plan to tackle our affordability crisis, 1 million homes over the next 10 years, after school for all, and solving every shooting in this city. These are big, these are bold, but that is what the moment calls for, and that is what sets me apart.
Another question now from Kate.
Do you plan to support institutions like Columbia that are facing federal cuts to research specifically, and how?
100%. What we are seeing coming from this federal administration is unprecedented in its scope, but I think the Constitution is on our side. I'm a lawyer in addition to being a state senator, and we saw the way that the 14th Amendment was used during the Civil Rights era. We saw how the NAACP revolutionized the use of that amendment to give us equal protection that we enjoy today. I think we have to utilize the 10th Amendment in the same way to protect our local institutions and ensure that there are no unconstitutional grabs of money that was already paid for. Our higher education institutions here in New York City, like Columbia, are part of what make us great. And it is important for the next mayor to ensure that we are doing that. So I want to hire 50 more lawyers for the law department to go on the offensive, utilizing the 10th Amendment. But I'm also prepared to wage fiscal warfare if that is necessary, should this current administration not follow the courts.
Raquel, on housing.
Could you share some details on your ambitious plans to have 1 million houses?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So I want to preserve 300,000 units here in New York City, and I want to create 700,000 more. I want to utilize the tools that we have at our disposal in government to make that happen. One, we got to build in places that are already dense. Part of my plan is something called Mega Midtown, utilizing the increase in the FAR cap that we instituted from the state level to have more mixed income be built in Midtown so families of all incomes can enjoy what it means to live there. But I also think it's important for us to be building housing of all types. Right now, we currently incentivize the building of single and studio units. I want to do some more family-oriented building so that we can get families into those spaces and have our young professionals, our kids coming out of college, having the opportunity to get into those studios and single units. I think we have an opportunity in our commercial real estate space that has seen vacancies and the change in work patterns. We got to speed up the conversion to residential. There's a lot of opportunity there that the city can use, and we got to use our imagination. There are places in the city that did not exist in the past, like Co-op City and Battery Park City, that required ingenuity, that required some imagination. That is part of what I want to do. I want to solicit public input and to create some new neighborhoods. I grew up in a rent-stabilized apartment. My whole story is not possible without that. So we got to ensure that we are protecting those tenants as well. The city has made a good start with the Right to Counsel program, yet it has never been fully funded. I want to fully fund that. And I also want to expand the protection to homeowners who are facing foreclosure and deed theft.
And the follow-up?
So you talk about rent-stabilized housing. So there are landlords who have quite a few housing that they took off the market because they're unable to, well, they say bring it up to code. What will you do to ensure that these come back on the market? Because your plan to build 700 houses may not come to fruition. What do you do about those that you can actually tackle as it relates to warehousing?
Thank you for the follow-up, and it's a great question. I think there are a number of challenges with getting some of these units back onto the market. Some of it, I think, are developers who were just unwilling to put it back up because they're unsatisfied with what the market might yield. And some of it is truly because there aren't the resources for them to get it up to code in order to do it. So part of what I have put in my plan is an ability for developers, property owners who do not have violations, who have been good actors in this space, to utilize vouchers to get tenants into that unit and open those units up to people who have been on the verge of homelessness or who are currently homeless. Something that I fought for on the state level, the Housing Access Voucher Program that we're trying to get this year as well, would provide more vouchers for the system to ensure that we can have those folks being able to get into some units. I think it is a really good opportunity, and that's something I'd like to get done to get some of those units back on the market.
Lauren.
So as mayor, how do you think you would approach your relationship with President Trump?
Look, I think New Yorkers expect for their mayor, whoever the president is, to work with the president when it is in the best interest of the city. What Donald Trump has made clear is that not only does he not care about New York City, but he is using us as a stage for his worst instincts so that he can make a mockery of the things that make us great. We have to have someone willing to stand up to a bully. To me, it is anti-New York City to get pushed around and to not push back. So I am prepared to push back against this president when he is attacking vulnerable New Yorkers. I'm the son of 2 immigrants that came to this city to work hard for opportunity, just like most people come here and stay here. But my parents were undocumented when they had me. They still were able to take me to Kings County Hospital when I had asthma because they knew that the city would have their back. That is the type of mayor that I want to be, unlike what we are seeing from the current administration, where there is compromise and an unwillingness to criticize this president. I'm going to be standing up for New Yorkers. One of the things that I'd like to do, in addition to what I mentioned on my frontline agenda and utilizing the 10th Amendment and being on the offense, I want to give people opportunity. I want to start something called Work NYC, which is a New York City specific work permit, so that folks who are coming here who are trying to work have that ability. You know, I've read the case law on this. It's not a slam dunk legal case. But when City Hall was presented with this idea, they said that no other city had done this before. That to me is unacceptable and not our problem. We got to step up, we got to be creative, and we got to use the tools that we have. And that's what I plan to do as the next mayor.
Any areas that you can see yourself already working with President Trump if elected mayor?
Right now, it is really unclear to see what common ground there is. He has, at every turn, attacked some of the things that have already proven to be beneficial, whether that is congestion pricing or whether it is our immigrant community. So I don't see them just yet, but should the opportunity present itself, I would be willing to work in the best interest of New York City.
Lauren.
So Trump has warned that he wants to pull the federal approval for congestion pricing. So if elected, how would you help protect congestion pricing from the federal administration?
You know, one of the more disappointing things from this administration was seeing when our current governor proposed a pause in congestion pricing, and this mayor had nothing to say for 2 days. That to me was a posture that, again, the mayor and the media capital of the world should never adopt. At minimum, I would be holding press conferences, utilizing the bully pulpit, getting all of the major stakeholders. We're in the financial capital of the world, the media capital of the world, getting everybody to sing from the same sheet of music to say, this is a good thing for the lifeblood of our city. I am a public transit commuter. I do not drive. I take the train, I take the bus. And this is something that is good not only for the MTA revenue, but also good for our environment. I'm a lifelong asthmatic. Air quality matters to me and to so many New Yorkers. So we have to have a mayor that's going to stand up. So I would, at minimum, be yelling from the rooftops that we're not going to accept this. I would, of course, be willing to join in litigation to stop this. I don't believe that they are on any solid legal ground to prevent congestion pricing from moving forward, but I would at minimum be utilizing the bully pulpit to call as much attention to it as possible.
And we have a last question for you, Senator. Had you been the mayor last year around this time, would you have sent the NYPD to storm in our campus?
I think what we saw there was the opposite of what leadership should be. What is important in times of great passion and great conflict and heated discussion is a leader that is willing to come in and to take the temperature down. And that is what I would have been doing. I would have been on the campus myself. It is part of our New York City DNA for us to disagree, and for us to disagree rather loudly. We also, think it's important that people remain safe in those disagreements. So where there is law breaking, where people's safety is threatened, sure, the police should be present, but I don't think that should be the first order of business. The first role of a leader is to bring the temperature down and allow for this conversation to happen in as safe a way as possible. That's what I would have been doing.
Senator Myrie, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everybody, for being with us today. We're going to show you now the QR code to the quick poll. You have it right there. So it's just 2 quick questions for you. We're going to see the results really soon. And thank you, all of you, for being with us throughout the day. And hopefully we can do this again with the candidates who didn't show up. But thank you.